Hi everyone, welcome to our first virtual online lecture. My dog in the background. So this is my plan, is every week when we would normally meet, I will just record teaching a lecture as if I'm giving you the information like I would see you in class, and just upload it and so that you can watch it and kind of navigate through things. And then you can always feel free to contact me. The different channels I told you, my cell phone, Remind, Blackboard, email, kind of whatever you need. And I will apologize. I don't think my mouth and the sound is matching up. I've noticed that in my other videos. So sorry about that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We are in week 9. This video is for Tuesday, March 17th. And initially I had a couple things planned that I'm just going to scrap based on just the flexibility that we're dealing with now. So we are going to first introduce chapter 5. So I'm going to go through the PowerPoint just like I would normally do in class. So I'm going to share my screen with you and we're going to talk about some chapter 5 concepts. So just give me a minute. You're going to see like a bunch of screens pop up. It's going to be really weird, but then you'll get to see what I see. There it is. Lots of screens. Okay. Here we go. Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is on basically how you output information, so to speak. Test taking, writing papers, presenting. So the purpose of academic tasks, essentially, why are you assessed? Well, because the big umbrella in most of your classes, you will have program level outcomes, meaning, here to become an RN, you will need to do X, Y, and Z, and then in your courses, you'll have to do certain things to pass the course. So there are different outcomes you have to meet. Academic integrity is part of this, like academic tasks and kind of the process through which you go through. So academic integrity is basically like your honesty and learning, your ethics, your morals, being truthful and honest in your work. So integrity matters. I mean, obviously, if you are getting information in a way that's untruthful or plagiarizing or cheating on tests or quizzes, it may get you through like the short term, but it's really not going to benefit you long term. Like you're not going to be able to cheat and steal your way through your entire career. Plus, I mean, just having character. And then it does reflect on your college as well as, future employers. So there are different kinds of academic dishonesty. The very obvious one is plagiarism, presenting someone else's work as your own. So sometimes that can be very blatant, as in you're copying and pasting and just plugging in someone else's work. Other times maybe it's unintentional, meaning you thought someone said something really nice and you're like, oh, I'm going to put it in my own words, but you really only change like 1 or 2 words and you don't give them credit. That's still plagiarizing. And you can actually also plagiarize off yourself, which a lot of people do not realize. And I think we actually talked about this a little bit in class previously. If you had a class in the fall and then you have a class in the spring in which you have to do like a research paper, and you're like, oh, that class we took in the fall's topic that I wrote about, I could really use that again in the spring. And you just submit the same paper, that is plagiarizing yourself. You would have to talk to the instructor and say, hey, I think this is a good fit. Could I use this? And how could I tweak this to make it work? Or you'd have to kind of come up with another paper. So you can't just kind of reuse the same paper over and over. Same thing if by some chance like you publish something. You wouldn't be able to use something, even if you already published it elsewhere, in another piece of writing without giving yourself credit. So it's kind of a weird concept. And then another type of academic dishonesty is obviously just cheating. Maybe you're looking off someone else's paper, or like you use someone else's homework. It's just anything that's going to give you or another student an unfair advantage. So let's say that you and a friend are taking the same class, same teacher, just on different days, and you know exactly what the test is about. If you say, hey, make sure you really study this concept, technically you're cheating because you're giving that student an unfair advantage, whereas the other students don't have that same advantage. So to be academically honest, just be aware of those kind of things. Know the definition of plagiarism and cheating. Make sure you're preparing, you're managing your time, you're citing sources, and then you use resources to make sure that you don't need to resort to these things, essentially. All right, citing sources. So you do need to cite, I think, more often than people realize. If you read someone's work and you want to incorporate it into your own, even if you put it into your own words, even if you paraphrase it, you still have to cite where you got those ideas because they're not your original ideas. The only time you do not need to cite is if it's purely your own, meaning you generated this idea, it is original to you, or it's general knowledge. I mean, a really basic example of that would be like, the sky is blue. But you know what I mean, like really general knowledge. People tend to know that information. You don't have to cite it. So other than that, you do need to be aware of what you need to cite. Part of that comes into knowing what it means to paraphrase. So paraphrasing is basically summarizing ideas in your own words. It's not just changing like 1 or 2 words. It is really summarizing, putting things into your own words, doing the work to make it make sense to you. All right, so that's the academic integrity, and the non-journal for chapter 5 is actually going to be connected around this concept, so we'll get to that next week. The next part of the chapter talks about papers and presentations, which as college students, it's just a way of life. So the one thing that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to papers is just choosing a topic. And so there's lots of ways to go about that. If you're given free reign, for instance, sometimes that's nice, other times it's overwhelming. You may need to talk to your instructor, you may need to review the table of contents, do a little Google search, something to kind of get an idea of the topic, and those can kind of start getting you thinking. And then of course there's the writing process, which this will be the topic of your chapter 5 journal. So this is part of the chapter that you'll want to pay a lot of attention to because you're going to have to actually write on the writing process. Kind of ironic. So writing is a process. It's cyclical. It doesn't have to go in 1, 2, 3 because you could have to go back to the planning stage after you. So the planning stage basically just means, you're going to spend some time. I'm going to come up with my topic. I'm going to brainstorm ideas. I'm going to find my sources. I'm going to outline it. Maybe I'm going to start getting a little bit of a draft going. Then you're going to actually do some writing, whether that means 1 draft, 10 drafts, whatever that looks like for your particular topic in your assignment. And then you'll do some of that reviewing, that editing, the revising, the proofreading, the peer editing if it needs to be. So another thing that I like to talk about in this is the difference between editing and revising. Editing is the nitty-gritty. Like if I'm going to edit someone's paper, I'm going to go through and I am going to look for spelling, grammar, punctuation. That's editing. Revising is more big picture. Revising is when you're looking to see, okay, how well does this flow? Do all my paragraphs support my argument, support my thesis? Do I need to add, take away, rearrange? So revision is more big picture. Presentations, you guys, although this chapter is, this semester is going to be a little strange, you will still have to submit your PowerPoint for your final project. Originally, you were going to present it, so you get to miss out on that component, which I know you're super sad about. But presentations are oftentimes required in your academic career and then sometimes in your professional career as well. So I know a lot of people have kind of like performance or speaking anxiety. The best way to go about kind of beating that, even though for some people it'll never go away, and that's okay. So a little bit of anxiety is good. It'll help you kind of get your adrenaline going, make you stay on topic. So the best way to do that is to prepare and practice, making sure that you have rehearsed it, maybe even in front of a practice audience or a mirror or in front of a video camera, anything that just kind of makes you prepare. The golden rule of presenting is say, here's what I'm going to say, actually say it, and then recap what you said. That's kind of a nice way to stack your presentation. And then the chapter will go into some details about like how to engage the audience, asking questions, polling, that kind of thing, to make sure that your audience is with you. And then the next couple slides in another part of the section talks about these different principles, especially as it relates to using like PowerPoints or Prezis or things like that, those kind of presentations. Not everyone uses those when they present, and that's okay. So if you are interested in that, it does go through a section on that in our chapter. All right, and then the chapter starts to wind down by talking about test-taking strategies. So the first thing it focuses on is there are different kinds of tests, and so you should ideally know the kind of format. Is it multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, whatever it might be. So that's the first thing, is know what kind of test it is so you can prepare accordingly. So then our chapter talks about multiple choice tests, like some strategies. You want to eliminate the wrong answers. Read all the choices. Don't just assume, oh, this one looks good, and eliminate the other ones. Read them all first and then eliminate the wrong answers. Even cover up your answers. Only read the question first and only look at the possible answers after you've read the question, because you can anticipate what your answer might be. Only change your answer if you have a good reason. More often than not, we have a right answer and we change it to wrong. So you want to make sure that if you change your answer, you have a good reason to do so. Short answer and essay exams, you want to really take your time and plan, especially if you know kind of the questions ahead of time. You could practice writing your essay exam responses. You can plan what you're going to say. You can prepare, how is this going to be structured? Even if you don't know the questions, the day of the test, take the first couple minutes or however long you have, maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's only a couple, and just plan it out. Do an outline. And then make sure you actually answer the question. So many essay questions go off topic, and you want to make sure it comes back to the actual question. You're answering that entire question, and then proofread it, go back through and check it. And then take home and online exams, which we're going to get real familiar with here, online exams. Same thing, you want to make sure that you're preparing accordingly, you're using the resources that you're allowed to use, and that goes back to that academic integrity. All right, so that is chapter 5. So as normal, like we normally would, I'm previewing the chapter with you. And then for next Tuesday, my expectation is that you read the chapter itself. So you're going to read the actual chapter. And as part of that, inside chapter 5, so I'm in our course now, inside chapter 5, you'll see the journal. So this I normally give you a hard copy of, only now there's no more hard copies. I know you all are going to miss my paper. So chapter 5 journal, you click in it, and the prompt is right there in red. This one's a really quick and short to the point prompt. What steps are involved in writing a paper? So when you go to do your journals, most of you have been doing this anyway. Some of you have been typing it and printing it out. So at this point, you're going to just have to type it and submit it in the Dropbox. There's the right there. Browse my computer and then find it where you saved it and hit submit, and that'll go through to me. So same thing, same policy with the journals. And you can see I have the due date right here. Tuesday, March 24th is when your chapter 5 journal is due by 10 p.m. So it's even giving you a little bit longer than obviously we would have, since we usually meet at 12 o'clock on a Tuesday. But after that, like, the Dropbox kind of closes. So you need to make sure you have it in, so you have a little bit of leeway. This is also how I will base your attendance. If you are submitting your chapter 5 journal and then your chapter 4 quiz, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit, those are the assignments I'm using. Even though they're due in week 10, I'm using them for week 9 attendance. So if you don't submit those, you lose your week 9 attendance and you get zeros on the assignment. So just make sure you submit those. That's how you'll get your week 9 attendance points, since I no longer will see you physically in a classroom. So that is chapter 5. So for next week, you are reading chapter 5 and you're submitting that chapter 5 journal entry. All right, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is your final project. This is what we will be discussing in class. Unfortunately for you all, maybe unfortunately, we're still doing the final project. We've already started it. We've already gone through it. We've already talked about it. The only thing that's going to change is you're just not presenting it. You're not going to present it to me. You're not going to present it to the class. You are just going to upload a PowerPoint into Blackboard. So you're still doing all the work. A lot of you have already started the first several steps. I just wanted to touch base with you on step 4 and then step 5. So we've talked about the first 3 steps, career description, overview of your career pathway, and then your credible professional organization or association and the benefits of joining one. Step 4 is that code of conduct. Now, for some of you, we discovered in your professional organization, they had even like a little link or an area on their website that talked about the ethics or the ethical guidelines of this particular field that you're in. So depending on your field, you may be able to find it inside your organization's page, or you may have to do a more general like Google search. When you are finding this, I've had some students find like a list of like 30 guidelines they have to follow. That's not what you need to put in your PowerPoint. Kind of look through the list, whether it's 5, whether it's 30, look and see what are some of its like most important points. What are some of the most important guidelines or tenets or ideas that someone in your field of nursing or your field of IT or whatever it is, what are your expectations? How are you going to uphold yourself in a professional way? And that's going to go with part 4. And I said approximately 1 paragraph. If you can put it in paragraph format, some of you may put it in list format. Again, what I don't want is like a couple slides of just numbers. Like, here's all 100 rules I have to follow. That's not what we're doing. So that's number 4. And then part 5 is your reference slide. So this is where I said all along to keep track of all the sources you've used, everything that you've done so far, so that you can have an easier time when it comes to making your reference slide. So APA is the format that you're going to do. And I'm going to go back here. And let's say I want to go to APA Al at Purdue. This is a nice site. Here we go. That's going to tell you what your formatting is. It's going to tell you, and they just switched over to the 7th edition too. It's going to tell you your guidelines. If you are doing, in this case, you guys are doing a reference list because most of you won't have in-text citations yet. You're probably just going to have that reference list. It's going to give you, hey, here's the information you need. And there's also an automatic up here source. You pick your source. Most of you will have websites. Put your URL in and hit cite, and it'll do a citation for you. Another one that I tell students they can look into is APA Citation Machine. Now, I will say with this one, it is a tool. You can see, you can tell it, okay, you need APA, you need it for a website, journal, whatever it might be. You can get your citation generated this way, but please just check it. Sometimes it may not capitalize or italicize the right way, the right thing. So just check it, and that's where you would go back to your Al at Purdue and see how it's formatted and make sure it's done that way. But the key thing here is please just make sure you're keeping track of all the sources you've used throughout the entire project. You've been jotting them down. I know a lot of you have been jotting them down, keeping track, because at the end, last slide will be your reference slide. Your reference slide, I repeat, is not just a list of websites. That's not a reference slide. Their reference slide has more information than just a list of websites. So that's why you want to go ahead and consult sites like the APA Al at Purdue or the Citation Machine. And some of you might have other resources because you've taken a comp class or an academic writing class, and that's fine. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is your Chapter 4 quiz. So I'm going to go back into our course, back to lessons, and into Chapter 4. Okay, so I scroll down a little bit. You'll see the journal that you all have already submitted. Here's Chapter 4 quiz. So here it is. It's going to click on it. It's going to open it up. Mine, because I'm in Chrome, goes down here. I'm going to hit Enable Editing. Here's the quiz. So this one is 10 questions. Now, obviously, we're all online right now. This was going to be an open note quiz anyway, so I'm not terribly concerned about it. The whole thing you need, or the main thing you want to make sure you do, is respond in complete sentences. I know we've talked about like take-home quizzes before. Like, this is going to become even more important because this is all I have now. So I need you to really follow these directions. 2 to 5 sentences each response. So complete sentences. Make sure you address the entire question. So I'm going through here. Most of them are pretty straightforward, but just make sure you address the entire question. 2 to 5 sentences. When you are done, file, save it into your hard drive, to your desktop, wherever you save it. When you get back into our course, you'll see in the same area right underneath, Chapter 4 Quiz Dropbox. Here it is. Same due date as your Chapter 5 journal. Browse your computer, find it, submit it, and that is your Chapter 4. All right, so we get back out of there. Hi again. So recap. Ooh, this is going to be nice and shaky. Sorry about that. Recap. For next week, Tuesday, March 24th, you are reading Chapter 5, completing the Chapter 5 journal, and submitting your Chapter 4 open note take-home online quiz. It encompasses all of those things now. So 2 assignments due next week. Those 2 assignments will also count as your week 9 attendance. So please make sure you do that. If you have any questions on anything, call me or set up a call with me. I gave you my cell phone number in one of the emails I sent you. Text me and remind, text me on my cell phone, email me, Blackboard message me, just whatever you need to do to make sure that you're feeling okay on everything. So I will see you all next week. Actually, you'll see me. I won't see you. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.